Nobody wants to say it out loud, but I will. Most women today are not as valuable as they think they are. Harsh? Maybe. True? Absolutely. Tell me this. Have you ever wondered why the average woman acts like she's too good for 90% of men, while bringing almost nothing to the table? Why does she believe she deserves royal treatment just for existing? The answer is simple, but brutal. She's been overdosed on free attention. Scroll through Instagram, TikTok, or Tinder, and you'll see the evidence. An endless flood of likes, DMs, and compliments convinces her she's untouchable, a prize no man can afford to lose. And after years of this, she starts to believe the hype. But here's the twist. That confidence isn't real. It's not built on accomplishments, character, or genuine value. It's built on scraps of validation handed out by desperate men who expect something in return. And because she's been told she's special since childhood, she walks through life convinced she deserves premium treatment without ever earning it. This is how the toxic cycle begins. Women expect men to chase, to invest, to fight for crumbs of approval, all while secretly fearing they aren't worth as much as they pretend to be. They act strong, but deep down, they're fragile. And here's the real tragedy. Men play right into it. They pour out their attention, their time, and their energy for free, fueling an ego that ends up working against them. That's why in this video, I'm going to break down the psychology behind the modern female ego. You'll see why it's inflated, why it's fragile, and most importantly, how to flip the script. So instead of chasing her, she's the one desperate to impress you. From the very beginning, modern women are placed on a pedestal. As little girls, they don't have to earn attention. It just comes to them. You're so pretty. You're so smart. You're so special. Compliments pour in not as rewards, but as background noise. And when you grow up swimming in praise, you start to believe it's your birthright. By the time she reaches her teenage years, the volume gets louder. Every selfie, every story, every short clip pulls in dozens, maybe hundreds of likes and comments. Strangers flood her feed with validation, and slowly she learns to confuse attention with worth. She hasn't built much, but she already believes she's a prize no man can afford to lose. That's the psychological factory at work. It doesn't build character, it manufactures ego. She mistakes being noticed for being valuable. She confuses applause with confidence. And here's the problem. When your self-image is built on borrowed energy, it's never stable. It always needs more fuel. That's why we see the paradox everywhere. Women demand to be treated like queens, while secretly fearing they don't deserve the crown. They posture with strength, but crumble if the stream of attention slows. They act untouchable, yet they're addicted to reassurance. And men? Men keep the machine running. Every unnecessary compliment, every thirsty like, every ignored good morning text adds another brick to the castle of her ego. Most guys don't even realize they're feeding the very system that works against them. And that's the catch. Attention isn't value. It's just volume. Real confidence doesn't need an endless supply of claps. Fake confidence does. The more she needs to be reminded she's special, the more fragile she actually is. So here's the play. Cut the background noise. Stop giving validation for nothing. Don't hand out compliments like candy. Don't chase her just to keep the illusion alive. Make your attention mean something. Because when it's rare, it's powerful. That's how you stop fueling the ego factory. And that's where your leverage begins. Most men look at a woman's confidence and think it's solid. But what they're actually seeing is ego. And ego is nothing more than a mask. The louder she brags about her value, the more fragile she feels underneath. Take the woman who insists she deserves to be treated like a princess. If she really believed it, she wouldn't need to demand it. Or the one who brags she's too good for most men. Deep down, she knows she's not. That boldness is just armor to cover her fear of being ordinary. The bigger the ego, the weaker the foundation. That's why so many modern women live in contradiction. On the outside, they act entitled, but on the inside, they live with doubt. They posture like they're untouchable, yet they chase validation harder than anyone. And the likes, the the thirsty comments, they don't actually fill the gap. She knows those men would validate anything. Their approval is like counterfeit money, lots of circulation, zero real value. What actually matters to her is the rare approval of a man who doesn't need her. The man with standards, the man with options, the man who won't bend just for her attention. That kind of validation is scarce, and precisely because it's scarce, it's powerful. That's why she obsesses over men who don't chase. It's not that she enjoys being ignored. It's that when a man who's independent finally gives her attention, it feels real. And here's where most men miss the point. She needs your validation far more than you need hers. Cheap approval creates ego, but rare approval creates desire. Once you see that, the balance of power flips. So the play is simple. Hold steady. Don't defend yourself. Don't over-explain. Don't rush to convince her. Let her see that your confidence doesn't depend on her response. When her usual tactics stop working, the mask begins to slip, and the ego behind it starts to crack. Here's where most men lose the game without even knowing it. They show up like salesmen. They pitch themselves. They shower her with compliments. They laugh at jokes that aren't funny. They nod along with opinions they don't even share. Every move screams the same thing. She's the buyer, and he's the product. And once you've set that frame, you're already at a disadvantage. But the truth is different. You're not a product on display. You're the prize. You're not trying to win her approval. You're deciding whether she wins yours. The second you flip the frame, everything changes. Not because you're playing games, but because you're protecting your value. Not to punish her, but to retrain her instincts. Because in this game, the man who filters is the man who wins. Instead of chasing her attention, you make your attention something rare, something she has to earn. That shift is subtle, but it hits hard because it turns the dynamic upside down. And this works because scarcity has always been powerful. Throughout history, the men who had options didn't need to chase, and women competed to earn their attention. That psychology hasn't changed. When your time, focus, and approval are scarce, she feels the weight of them. But here's the catch. You can't fake it. If your life is empty, if you're available 24/7, if you're desperate for her to fill your time, she'll sense it instantly. Real scarcity comes from having purpose. When your life is already full of goals, of discipline, of genuine options, your attention is naturally limited. And that's what makes it valuable. Once she realizes your time isn't free, the game flips. The woman who expected you to chase suddenly starts chasing you. The one who assumed she was evaluating you now finds herself being evaluated. That's the play. Stop pitching. Start filtering. Let her earn her place instead of giving it away. Because the man who sets the frame doesn't have to chase. He chooses. And once you own that role, you'll never see the interaction the same way again. Once you flip the frame, the next battlefield is emotional control. And this is where women test men the hardest. The little digs, the sarcastic remarks, the sudden challenges. They're not accidents. They're deliberate. She wants to see if you'll break, if her approval has the power to control you. Most men fail right here. They get defensive. They explain themselves. They argue back. And in that moment, they've already surrendered the frame. Because when you rush to justify, you're admitting her opinion matters more than your own. But the strongest move isn't to fight back. It's to stay still. Non-reaction is power. Not anger. Not sarcasm. Not pretending to be above it. Genuine indifference, not because you're emotionless, but because you're emotionally sovereign. She doesn't shake you, because you don't place your worth in her approval. When she mocks your choices and you don't defend them, you stand taller without saying a word. This is devastating to her ego, because manipulation only works if you react. Most men bend themselves into knots trying to win her approval. But the man who doesn't, the man who stays calm and unshaken, he instantly separates himself from the crowd. He shows he doesn't need her validation to feel whole. And here's the key. Non-reaction isn't coldness. You're not dismissive. You're not rolling your eyes. You're not acting fake. You're simply unaffected. True confidence doesn't require a performance. And when she realizes her usual tactics don't touch you, her sense of power slips. Because if she can't shake you, she has to ask herself, maybe you're stronger than she thought. Maybe you have more options. Maybe she's the one being evaluated, not you. And that single shift starts to crack the inflated ego from the inside. That's the play. Stay centered. Let her tests bounce off you. The moment you stop reacting, you stop being controlled. And once you stop being controlled, she can't help but respect you. Once you master non-reaction, the next level is status. Women are wired to scan for it constantly. They don't just listen to what you say, they watch how you carry yourself, how you respond when challenged, whether your presence demands respect without a single word spoken. And here's the paradox. The man who talks the loudest about being high value is usually the weakest in the room. Bragging is insecurity in disguise. But the man who communicates status without saying a word, he doesn't need to announce it. His behavior speaks for him. That's why the quiet confidence of a man who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't over-explain has such an impact. He moves with purpose, not performance. His standards set the tone. He doesn't need to convince anyone. He simply lives in a way that makes his value obvious. And women feel it immediately. The one who thought she was in control suddenly starts adjusting her behavior. The one who expected special treatment begins to work for it. The one who tested boundaries now respects them. Status flips the dynamic without you ever having to say, "I'm high value." This response is hardwired. For thousands of years, women who could spot high-status men had better chances of survival and security. That instinct hasn't gone anywhere. It still runs in the background today. Which is why when you communicate genuine status, she can't help but recalibrate around you. But there's a catch. You can't fake it. Women have a radar for false confidence. They know when you're posturing, when your words don't match your reality. Real status flows from accomplishment, discipline, and purpose. It comes from knowing you have options and living like a man who doesn't need approval to feel whole. That's the play. Let your life speak louder than your mouth. Don't tell her who you are. Show her through consistency, discipline, and composure. Because real status isn't theatrical, it's behavioral. And once she feels it, her ego has no choice but to shrink in its presence. If this is starting to click, you're already ahead of 90% of men. Because most guys never figure this out. If you don't hold the frame, you lose the game. There's one resource men keep forgetting they control, and it's the rarest one of all: commitment. In the sexual marketplace, women control access to intimacy. But men? Men control access to commitment. And that commitment, your time, your focus, your loyalty, your emotional investment, is the most valuable currency you have. Most guys throw it away like spare change. They get attached before she's proven anything. They give all their time and attention before she's shown she deserves it. They hand over exclusivity to women who haven't given them value in return. And when commitment is cheap, it loses its power. That's why so many women stop respecting the men who chase them. If you're willing to offer your loyalty before she's earned it, you're telling her your standards don't exist. You're showing her your time and your energy don't matter. And once she believes that, entitlement takes root. But when you treat your commitment like the premium asset it is, the game shifts. Suddenly, she can't assume she's already won. She has to prove herself. She has to show up with value. And that pressure changes her behavior. She goes from expecting to earning, from sitting back to leaning in. Think of it like a contract. No sane man would sign a deal with someone who brings nothing to the table. Yet in dating, men do it all the time, handing over their loyalty without asking what's being offered in return. And then they wonder why she doesn't respect them. The answer is simple. Respect follows standards. If your commitment is guarded, if your attention is selective, she feels it. She knows beauty alone won't buy you. She realizes she has to bring more than looks and ego. And that's when her behavior changes, because your standards left her no other choice. That's the play. Guard your commitment. Make it clear it has to be earned, not given by default. Because when commitment is scarce, it becomes priceless. And when you treat it that way, she will too. Once you understand the value of your commitment, the next challenge is learning how to protect it. Because every relationship is a battle of frames, and the person who bends first, whoever caves just to keep the peace, always loses ground. Women know this instinctively. That's why they test. The ultimatums, the drama, the sudden emotional storms, they're not accidents. They're designed to measure your strength. Think of it like a game of chicken. Two cars are racing straight at each other. The one who swerves first loses. In relationships, it's no different. The one who's more desperate to keep things alive is the one who folds. And the one willing to walk away, that's the one who holds power. Most men swerve early. They give in to keep her happy. They adjust their standards just to avoid conflict. They beg to stay in her good graces. And every time they do, her respect dies a little more. She doesn't see kindness. She sees weakness. That's why outcome independence is everything. When you no longer need her approval to feel secure, when you can walk away without betraying your standards, you win by default. She realizes her threats don't work, her silence doesn't work, her emotional tricks don't work. And that realization hits her ego harder than anything you could ever say. Here's the part most men miss. Strength doesn't mean aggression. You don't win by yelling louder or fighting harder. You win by staying calm, steady, and unmoved. The man who refuses to break sends a clear message. I don't need you to validate me. I validate myself. And that kind of power is magnetic. When she sees you won't fold, she has to recalculate. Either she rises to meet your standards, or she walks away. Either way, you win. Because if she leaves, you've filtered out someone unworthy. And if she stays, it's because she respects you more than she ever expected. That's the play. Build your walk-away muscle. Make peace with losing her, because that's the very thing that makes her fight to keep you. Not because she hates you, but because her instincts are scanning for power. Not to hurt you, but to test you. And most men fail that test by reacting. Now let's step back and ask, why do women act this way at all? The answer is simpler than most men think. Much of it isn't conscious, it's programming. For thousands of years, women who made themselves appear more valuable than they really were ended up with more resources, more protection, and more commitment. That survival tactic worked, and those instincts didn't vanish. They're still running today. Fast forward to now, and you'll see the same script everywhere. She doesn't have to plan it. She just repeats the lines coded into her psychology. I deserve better. I'm too good for most guys. If you won't, someone else will. It's not personal. It's the script talking. Most men fall into the trap of taking it personally. They think she's rejecting them. They assume she's being cruel on purpose. But the reality is different. She's testing. She's scanning for weakness. She's measuring whether you'll fold. That's what the script is designed to do. And here's where men lose. By reacting. They defend themselves. They explain. They try to prove their worth. And the moment they do, they confirm exactly what she's looking for. Insecurity. But once you see the script for what it is, the game changes. You stop reacting. You stop feeding it. You stop mistaking her words for personal attacks and start seeing them as pressure tests. And when her usual lines stop working on you, the script breaks down. Because here's the truth. Behind the inflated ego is usually insecurity. The girl who begs for constant validation doesn't actually believe she deserves it. The one who brags about being high maintenance knows she's not high value. The one who claims she's out of your league fears she's not even in the game. That's the play. Depersonalize. Don't argue with the script. Outlast it. Hold your ground. Stay calm. And respond with strength instead of emotion. The moment you stop feeding the programming, she's forced to face herself. And that's when her ego begins to collapse under its own weight. If female programming is the engine, then social media is the fuel. Never before in history have women had this much access to free, non-stop validation. One selfie, one short video, and instantly, hundreds of likes, comments, and thirsty messages flood in. Every ping of attention inflates her ego just a little more. But here's the reality. It's all smoke. Digital validation is counterfeit currency. The men dropping emojis and comments aren't real options. They're background noise. Their approval costs them nothing. And because it costs nothing, it's worth nothing. Still, she mistakes likes for love, followers for options, comments for commitment, because attention she didn't earn becomes the rope that hangs her self-worth, and the man who doesn't feed it becomes the one she can't ignore, where approval has to be earned. And this is where most men make the worst mistake. They join the circus. They like every post, reply to every story, add to the same stream of empty validation that's already drowning her. They think it makes them stand out, but it doesn't. It just proves they're one of the crowd. The smarter move is indifference. You don't compete with her online fans. You disarm the illusion completely. You don't care about the digital persona. You care about reality, her character, her consistency, what she brings into your life. And when she realizes her online popularity doesn't impress you, the bubble bursts. Her ego takes a hit because the man with standards can't be bought by pixels. But breaking the illusion isn't a one-time move. It's a discipline, You have to live by principles that starve the ego instead of feeding it. Cut off free validation. Hold your standards no matter how she reacts. Protect your time and energy like they're money. Require real value before giving real benefits. And most of all, be outcome independent. The second you stop needing her approval, she starts needing yours. Follow these consistently, and something shifts. The women who can't adapt will disappear, and that's good. The ones who remain, they'll be the ones who respect you, the ones who value you, the ones worth your commitment. That's the play. Break the spell, keep your discipline, and let reality do the filtering. Because when you live by strength, only the strong stay. At the end of the day, it comes down to a decision only you can make. You can keep doing what most men do, feeding women endless attention, validating every move, and watching their egos grow while your own value shrinks. That road ends in frustration, resentment, and relationships where you give everything but get nothing back. Or you can choose differently. You can step out of the validation economy. You can refuse to play into the fantasy. You can set standards so firm that women either rise to meet them or fall away. It isn't easy. It takes discipline, self-respect, and the courage to walk away from anyone who doesn't measure up. But the reward is real. Genuine respect, authentic attraction, and relationships built on truth instead of illusion. Because the moment you stop needing female approval, you gain freedom. You gain leverage. You stop begging and start choosing. And here's the paradox. When you no longer chase validation, that's when women start chasing you, not because of tricks or games, but because strength and authenticity activate something deep inside them that makes them want to earn you. But it has to be real. You can't fake this. Women can always tell the difference between a man pretending not to care and a man who truly doesn't need their validation. One cracks under pressure, the other stands unshaken. So the question isn't whether women have inflated egos. They do. The real question is, will you keep feeding the illusion, or will you build the strength to rise above it? Choose wisely, because your freedom, your peace of mind, and your future depend on it. If this message hit home, drop a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more. This is just the beginning.